is one. So when we go to that and apply these, then we understand what he's telling us. We are all interconnected. We're not separate from one another because our spiritual identity is one, but externally we look different because our personalities and our lower nature is unique to ourselves, depending on what we have done. And in this philosophy, what is the other part that needs to come into it? That we are living consciousness embodied in human bodies. But this consciousness, this inner divinity in each one of us, is on a continuum, that it never dies, it goes from life to life, and it is on a journey to where it came from. It starts from the source of all life, and it is inherently perfect, and through this journey the lower has to become the higher. But in life we have to know that we in fact are the higher, because that is the part that is eternal, immutable, and it lives from life to life, whether we remember it or not. This is what Krishna is telling us, that this he didn't have to go into, because at that time people knew that they lived from life to life and that they were on a journey and that the consciousness is on a continuum. So when we bring that perspective into it, we are this self because we are part of it, but we are inherently perfect and all of its powers are in us. So we need to hold on to that idea. So then, what does he call that in us? This ray that in me, he refers to as Ishvara. It's the part of this source that is in me as a ray. So, self is one, not many, is the constant refrain of the Gita. And he expresses it this way: as a single sun illuminateth the whole world, even so doth the one Spirit illumine every body of son of Bharata. So, what is elusive in us is separateness. We all think that we're separate from one another, and this is egotism, but it is an illusion. It's an illusion. Because it is not real, it just appears that way, and it fools us. So this profound truth then has to be realized in us, that we are in fact united, and the true self is the self of all. So this is the highest ideal that we have to reach. We are on this journey all together. We're all in it together on the same journey. So, what does that mean? As we said last week, it means sacrificing the lower to the higher. That sacrifice of self-interest to the interest of the whole. But that only comes as we become aware of who we truly are. So, HPB then expresses it this way. She says, esoterically, there is no other way, means, or method of sacrificing oneself to the eternal than by working and sacrificing oneself to the collective spirit of life, embodied in and for us represented in its highest divine aspect by humanity alone. Humanity alone. So then, striving to realize the eternal, instead of being a incomprehensible ideal, becomes perfectly comprehensible truth, that it, in its essential oneness in humanity, represents practical aspect of universal brotherhood. And when we apply it, it becomes a practical aspect of the on in daily life. So then, constant study and reflection on the nature of the true self, on universal brotherhood, on the laws of karma and reincarnation, and their application to our lives, arouses our intuitive perception to the fact that humanity is formed spiritually, mentally, and physically of one eternal universal essence, and that we are indissolubly bound up with the whole of humanity. What a profound statement that is. We come from this source, but we are part of the whole. Each one of us has exactly the same. Not one of us is more important than the other one or less important than the other one. Each human soul then has its own place in the scheme of things. So we're all equal to one another, and that equality is also inherent in Dharma or nature. So, as one's perception and appreciation of the universal truths grow, a change in one's attitude to life comes about. We're not concerned about the lower self and what we're doing personally, but we become aware of the universal aspect of us. And I put this word, and most people didn't understand what I said, so I'll just put it up here. When I look at this, I truly feel awe, because I look at it, oh my gosh, I'm part of that. This is just the solar system. The Milky Way has these as a dot on its arm. Constellations are galore in our cosmos. Imagine the vastness of it. And we said last week that the first aspect of this comes to us when we are trying to cultivate that inner life. It comes as a yearning to grow towards this light, and that is expressed in us as a sense of loss. And we compared it to like somebody dying in our family, and we feel that tremendous loss because we love them so much. Or we believed in something or someone and we lost it, and then we realize, oh my gosh, I believed in nothing because it wasn't true, but you survived it nevertheless. And the second we said is this: you look at it and you say, oh my gosh, the cosmos is such a vast entity, but I am part of it. In my inner nature, I am one with it. I come from it and I shall return to it. So that then makes us, we said, look at this thing called the body. I am enclosed in this form, and I want to free myself out of it. I want to become part of the universe. But in my inherent nature, that is who truly I am. This body enables me to live on earth, but it is not who I am. But it gives the illusion that that is who I am. So then, when conviction of this reality and far greater importance of the soul and its inner life over the concerns of the outer transitory personality deepens, motives of personal self-interest give place to concern for and devotion to the higher interests of humanity. This shift in consciousness, Mr. Judge writes this way: rely within your higher self, and that gives a strength as self uses him whom it will. Persevere, and little by little, new ideals and thought forms will drive out the old one. This is the eternal process, he tells us. And this is what mortification is. This is tapas. It is the responsibility of each human soul to align itself towards the higher aspect, and slowly, through replacing the lower ideals by the higher, move towards the universal aspect of who we are, in service to humanity, which is sacrifice of the lower to the higher. This is called tapas. And he goes on to say, as the rays of the sun, concentrated by means of a lens, burn away the object on which they are focused, so do the heat of the fire of higher aspiration kept up steadily over a long time melts, so to speak, and transform the gross nature of the lower self into a finer and more ethereal one, which then begins to respond to the action of the divine self within. So this preparation we are obligated to do, because no way can we hear the higher if we remain in this body. We have to etherealize ourselves. How does that work? How does this etherealization work? Mr. Judge has an article called Cultivation of Concentration. In that article, he tells us that as we try to learn to concentrate the mind onto the higher aspect of itself, the ethereal body separates from the material body in which it is enmeshed, because this inner self is the ethereal part of us. It is electromagnetic. So as it removes itself from the clutches of the body and separates, he says it has to grow just like the baby does. It has to learn to stand and lose its jello-like appearance. And in that article he tells us what fear, envy, anger does to it, what it does to it. And he tells us that anger is the most dangerous emotion that human beings have, because it scatters the electromagnetic body and it pushes it back into the physical and it shrivels. So that's another talk which we will address another time, but it had to be mentioned. This is what we are told to do, because it is necessary, it is obligatory. Okay, so then as this process continues, the inner voice we talked about last week, the voice of the silence, is heard and its advice followed. What is that called in regular parlance? The conscience. We have a conscience. It tells us not what to do ordinarily, but it does not tell us what to do. Gandhi says when that voice was silenced, he never took any action. And you remember, through ahimsa, non-violence, on his own and later with his associates, he managed to throw the British Empire out of India and obtain freedom for his people. So it is important to understand that this process does take place. The act then of consigning concerns of personal self in the course of performance of life's duties on the altar of self-impersonal, this self, in the fire of discriminative knowledge that wells up within in progress of time in the disciple's inner consciousness, is then called sacrifice or yajna, because we are able to hear the inner voice, the voice of the silence, and we're following the precepts of that inner life, which is in fact our true selves, this higher aspect, this higher consciousness. So then, as we continue on reflecting on these principles, we realize that these finite bodies which envelop the souls inhabiting them are said to belong to him, the eternal, indestructible, unprovable spirit who is in the body. Wherefore of Arjuna resolve to fight, recommends Gita, which is our higher self, which is Krishna.